Welcome. You are tuned into Today's Author, a show that we have a chance. We speak with local authors to find out about some of the things that they are producing. We are privileged today to be speaking with a gentleman. His name is William C. Carter, and he goes by the name of Bill. And he is here to tell us about his book, Fire and Wrath. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Let's start out by tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, sure. I've grown up in Massachusetts, lived here all my life. I did live in Plymouth for a few years in my teens. I've been writing since I was a kid, I think since I was like 7. My brother and I used to draw comic books and write our own stories and whatever. And it was just fun, it was a lark, and I didn't really think much of it until in the 7th grade, I got an academic award from my English teacher that said, excellent writer, future author. Whoa. And I believe that if I had not gotten that award, I would not be here today. Because I think that was a really big source of encouragement. And after that, I really started to focus on that and just start writing short stories and then graduated to novels and stuff. So it's been in my blood, I think, since I was a kid.
Did you ever have anything published before?
The only thing was I did my undergrad and graduate work through Harvard University's continuing ed program. So I was taking classes there for like 12 years, from 2001 to 2013. And in the course of that, I took a lot of creative writing classes. They had a literary journal called the Charles River Review, and I don't think they publish that anymore. And that had everything that students were producing, like short stories, poetry, memoirs, etc. And so I got in there 4 times, like 2 short stories and 2 novel excerpts over the course of my degree work. So that was a really nice start. But other than that, no, I hadn't been published otherwise until now.
So where did the idea, the concept for Fire and Wrath come from?
That is a very long story that I will keep very short. So in 2005 and 2006, I wrote what I hoped to be my great American novel, and it was a crime novel with literary aspects to it. There was this great American tragedy about this up-and-coming college-bound teenager who moves to this small coal town in Pennsylvania, gets wrapped up in the local politics. The whole town is run by gangsters, the Irish mob. And when he becomes too much of a problem, they frame him for a crime he didn't commit and send him off to juvenile prison. Excuse me. And he emerges years later as a hardened criminal, and he puts together his own cutthroat crew, and eventually they return to that town and burn it to the ground. And so the main character dies at the end because there really was nowhere else for him to go. But one of his henchmen, this slightly crazed arsonist named Jack Coyle, who was originally just a throwaway character, he jumped off the page, and I was like, wow, this guy is really cool. And so thinking about where to go from there, I thought, well, he's really interesting in a very unexpected way, and so let's see where he goes from here. So I did write a novel about him in 2009 called Poor Man's Lincoln, and that came out really well, and it was under the tutelage of a professor I worked with who became my mentor, and he loved it, and I started writing in his class, and then he said, keep going with it, and when you're done, I'll show it to my publisher. So it's in 2009. And so I finished it over the summer, and he sent it to his publisher. And they were like, okay, we like your character, we like your story, we like your voice, but the pacing is just too slow. So, sorry. And so rather than go back and try to rework that completely, I had already had the idea for Fire and Wrath, his next adventure. And I thought, well, I'll take everything I've been learning and let's put it all into this, because it was a more offbeat, original story, a really original concept. So I just put everything into that, and then, excuse me, my professor hooked me up with an agent in 2017, and then he and I started working on this together, and it's come light years from where it started, thanks to him. And so once it was done, he had said, okay, let's bring this out into the world and let's see if we can get it published. And eventually we did.
So talk to us about this young man. You tell an elaborate story about Jack Coyle, who's
Yes.
a professional arsonist. I believe that early on, you kind of tell us where Jack went wrong,
Yes.
where his life actually took a turn for worse, and it was something that hit close to home.
Yes. So he grew up in Philadelphia in a poor neighborhood in a pretty much broken home. It was just him and his younger sister. Like, their parents were terrible, but he had developed a fascination for fire very early on. And so then his sister got in trouble at school, and she came under the supervision of a vice principal who had a reputation for preying on disadvantaged kids, and there were rumors that he had assaulted these girls, and Jack had heard about it but didn't really care about it one way or another until his sister fell prey to this guy, this predator, and so then he knew that nothing would happen to the guy, that his brother was a cop, and they tended to sweep this stuff under the rug, and so he decided to take matters into his own hands, and he in the middle of the night went across town and with every intention of burning the guy's house down.
Right.
But then tragically, so at the last minute, he changes his mind and says, well, wait a minute, like, my sister would want justice, but she wouldn't want me to turn into a monster in the process. So he actually changes his mind and decides not to do it, but he's caught anyway. And with a gas can and a lighter, the police surround him and take him in. And attempted arson is just as bad as real arson, so he gets sent away to juvenile prison. He's 14, so in Pennsylvania, they're there till they're 21. So he's trapped in the system for 7 years, and like his mentor, he comes out just a hardened criminal, and it's just like, there's nowhere for me to go from here. So he's kind of locked into that trajectory on this dark path from very early on, and it was with good intentions, but you know what they say about good intentions. So.
Indeed, and so we see it where it kind of fast forwards to where he's having some dealings with some nefarious characters, something to do with counterfeit money or something. Counterfeit notes.
Oh, Confederate, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was in Poor Man's Lincoln. So the previous novel, it was all about these various parties trying to get their hands on a fortunate old Civil War currency that they had found. So he makes off with half of that payload. I don't want to give away what happens.
We don't want to give away the story here,
Right.
but the idea is, I think what I'm trying to weave here is that you show him coming out on the other side where he's still kind of having ill dealings.
Yep.
And somehow, and he's on the run.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yes.
And then he somehow comes across a friend from their youth, who's now a Plymouth County sheriff, who knew, who needs help assisting because there are 6 unsolved arsons that have taken place. And who better to turn to but maybe someone who has a little knowledge in this area.
Exactly, yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so it was, I think that was the original concept. And like I said, I had grown up with a lot of the buddy cop movies from the 80s and 90s. And 48 Hours was one of my earliest influences. And just that idea of a criminal and a cop working together to solve a crime or to catch someone even worse really appealed to me. That idea of 2 people from opposite sides of the law cooperating for mutual benefit. And and like To Catch a Thief, like that idea of fight fire with fire, literally. I thought it'd be cool if they had their own drama, their own troubled past, to work together to try to solve these arsons. Like, a lot of the victims were very high-profile pillars of the community, and so there's a lot of political pressure to solve these arsons. And so they bring in this unconventional character to sort of consult and try to solve the mystery. So I thought it definitely has a sense of urgency to it, a sense of tension, and he's also, like, he's in his 40s. He's very regretful. He has a lot of guilt about what he's done.
Yep.
He's made a lot of mistakes, and now it's time where he's like trying to balance the books and wants to redeem himself. So I feel like there's a lot of good tension there. He's a very unlikely, reluctant hero, and those are my favorite.
I was going to say that he's very much the anti-hero in this story. You must have done a lot of research, because some of the clues that Coyle was able to uncover during this about the perpetrator's methods, I was fascinated by. Talk to a little bit about that. These research you did.
Yes, I did tons and tons of research. Sorry, I have a cold.
It's all good.
Yes, researching everything from, I had to research actual like arson techniques as well as arson investigation. And I really needed it to be accurate, because I needed to speak from a point of authority. Otherwise, the whole story would fall apart. So, yeah, I did tons and tons of research, weeks and weeks. Like, I can't even tell you how many hours, but it was so worth it, and it was so fascinating to delve into this stuff. And I had to sort of back my way into a number of different little aspects, like the idea of I wanted to show something sinister. And so they're at the first arson site, and he's re-examining the crime scene, and he, by deductive thinking, he figures out that the culprit had superglued the front door shut in order to make sure the family couldn't get out. But I had to find a way to figure out how that could be. And so, like I said, he finds this like globs of residue on the door frame, and he asks, okay, did the first responders, did they smell anything strange? And they're like, yeah, it smelled like cyanide. And he's like, oh, there are a lot of different products or chemicals that give off cyanide, but only one that makes sense, and that's super glue. So he's able to like deduce that, okay, he super glued the door shut, which I thought was a very sinister way to end that chapter. So yeah, I did a lot of research in a lot of different ways. Later on, too, there's this whole thing about molten salt, that he is able to figure out this little clue, and he breaks the case wide open that way. So yeah, the research was fascinating and dark and kind of disturbing, but I thought it added a nice gravity to the story and gave it a weight that it otherwise wouldn't have had. So
we'll get to the molten salts in a couple of moments here. The other thing that I found fascinating is how you weaved in flashbacks. It's kind of telling a little bit of a backstory. It seems like there's an art to that, and I feel as though you did that well.
Well, thank you.
What were some of the things that you wanted to make sure you were telling the readers when you were flashing back, just to kind of give them kind of a backstory?
Yes. So the way the novel originally was structured, it was split into about 3 equal parts. And so parts 1 and 3 took place modern day, the current present day action. And then part 2 was one extended flashback 30 years in the past, which is the genesis of the entire story. Like that's where everything started. And so we had actually shown this, we had given the manuscript to a very high profile editor, and he gave us 2 really big points of constructive criticism. And one was that the flashbacks is great, and I love how you tie everything together, but it kills the momentum of the story. So you need to fix that. And so I thought, oh, well, what if I interweave the flashbacks?
Yeah, the brief interludes.
Yeah. So and now it prolongs the suspense, and it keeps the tension going. And so it's a big bombshell at the end rather than in the middle of the story. So the trick, and it took me like weeks to do this, to figure out at what points to start interweaving the flashbacks. Like it was like every 2 or 3 chapters, and introduce the reader to this whole other cast of characters and how their story and their activities and events reflect upon the modern day action and how it all interweaves together. So I needed to space that out in a gradual way, and then slowly build it up, and make the audience or the reader relate to these characters and sympathize with them, and that will help really give the ending an emotional impact. So those were key, and I really needed to treat that carefully and really build it up and make it as strong as possible. Yeah.
What was the gravitational pull for Coyle, Jack Coyle, to want to stay, knowing that A, he's wanted by a mobster, Angelo Castiglione.
Yep.
And he's also wanted by the law.
Yes.
Why does he feel compelled to stay with the case to help solve it and not just want to get out of there and hide somewhere?
Very good question. So at first, he's kind of forced into it. Like, the deputy Vance tows his car.
Yeah.
So that's his only...
The Marauder.
His Marauder, yeah. That's his mobility. So at first, he's very much forced into this, and he doesn't want to do it. Yeah. So there are two changes. So at some point early on, then he turns it into like a contest. He's like, okay, if I'm really the best at what I do, then this is a professional challenge to me. Like, maybe I can solve this where everybody else failed. Like, I'll succeed. And so it was like almost like it was a professional challenge for him. And that keeps him going for a little while, but it's still not like compelling. Like, the stakes are not high enough. And then he meets a survivor of one of the fires, this teenage girl,
right,
who lost her entire family. And he relates to her because she very much reminds him of his sister, who he failed back in the day when it really mattered. And that's been haunting him ever since. So once he meets this girl, and she's, of course, devastated by the loss of her family, and she wants justice. And the two of them form a very unlikely but very organic connection. And that was like one of the really emotional core of this story. And so then at some point she gets in trouble, and because the killer finds out she's still alive, and the killer wants to wipe out all of these families. He doesn't want any survivors. So she is put in danger, and that really compels Coyle to, like, oh no, like, I'm not walking away from this. Like, I'm in this till the end, and I'm gonna see justice done. So it starts off, like I said, being forced, and then kind of like, okay, let's see if I can do this, to I need to do this. And so it has a very emotional drive to it.
Yeah, Coyle has very intelligent, a good memory recall. You talked about the molten salt, and he beckoned back to when he was going to meet up with Vance initially, and coming across a drifter.
Yes.
And then somehow he's able to realize that something about that drifter, and talk to me about trying to piece that together, where the drifter comes back into the picture in a couple of chapters later.
Yes. So a key
Georgie?
Gordy. Yeah.
Gordy.
Yeah. So a theme that goes unspoken, that is very close to my heart, and it's a quote from Roger Ebert, the movie critic, when he said, "Strong emotions come not when characters are sad, but when they're good."
Yeah.
And that is a running theme through everything I write. And so Coyle goes to this diner. This was the established meeting, the rendezvous point to meet up with Vance. And there's only one seat available at the counter. Like, all the tables are taken, and there's one seat available, and nobody's taking that seat because this smelly drifter has the seat next to it on the end. Yeah. And so rather than just abhor this guy like everybody else is, he decides to sit down and then engages in conversation with him, because he's just like naturally curious about this guy. And they end up having a really interesting conversation about different things. And so when the investigation really is heated up, that's because he took the chance and decided to sort of befriend this guy and not just like stay away from him, is the key to unwrapping this and like solving the entire mystery. Yeah. Like, he couldn't have done it if he hadn't just tried to be a good person and meet this guy. So a lot of things. So I had to set up a lot of those clues with his behavior, his appearance, certain things he was doing, and that was like another like whole bunch of research I had to do to like, okay, What chemicals has he been interacting with to cause these particular mannerisms and stuff? So then it all boils down to this tiny little clue he finds at one of the arson sites. So it all ties together and helps him break the case.
What were some of the challenges you faced while writing this book?
The biggest challenges were, of course, was logistically, like I said, we had this like 30+ year gap between the original events and how they tie into the modern day. And my agent was very much on my case, justifiably so, to be like, okay, why now? Why is all this happening now?
Yeah.
What has been going on in the meantime? You need to track all of these characters' movements in between then and now.
Yeah.
And you have to come up with a plausible explanation as to how this all can work, because there are some somewhat, I don't want to say far-fetched, but like unusual circumstances involved. And I had to account for all of that and just be able to give an explanation of like, okay, that's why so much time has gone by, what's been happening in the meantime, and how does this all tie together? And so that was a huge challenge, and I must have like come to him like, oh, what if I do this? He's like, no, not good enough. Okay, well, a couple weeks later, okay, how about what about this? If nope, I don't buy it. You need to come up with something better. So he really pushed me, and I deeply appreciate it because if those explanations didn't work, they didn't like hold up to hold muster, then this story would have fallen apart. And then the other thing was the dialogue. And I will admit, for the first few years, my agent referred to most of my dialogue with the worst possible adjective, which is clunky. He's like, it's clunky dialogue. You got to make it better.
Gotta flow.
Yeah. So that took some time. And like, I don't know about other writers, but sometimes my characters all speak in the same voice. You know what I mean? Like, I just kind of write dialogue. So I had to really take the time and be like, okay, how would this person speak? How does this person speak? And give them each like an individual voice that separates them from everybody else. So there were a lot of logistical challenges with that.
A very local feel to this story. A lot of names. I mentioned a Castiglione.
Yeah.
When I think Coyle, I think Charlie Coyle from the Bruins, but I don't know if that has anything to do with it. What was it about having it have a local feel? You know, Plymouth County Sheriff, stuff like that.
I really wanted to do that because, like I said, I lived in Plymouth during my formative years as a teen, and it really made an impact on me. And whereas most crime thrillers usually take place like in the city, at least traditionally. Now I think people have gotten away from that. But the idea was I wanted to put Coyle in the most like uncomfortable position he could be. And that's what you should do with your characters. So he's very much a city creature. He loves the city. He loves that urban environment. So what would be his worst nightmare? To trap him out in the suburbs or in the sticks, like out in the country, like where he is very much a fish out of water and he's just not comfortable. And so a lot of these things sort of kind of all like dovetailed together and came together in a very nice way. So, and I just thought it was nice. I mean, a lot of like Dennis Lehane sets his stories in Boston, and so a lot of other crime writers, like Boston's a big city. So I don't know how many stories have been set in Plymouth, and so I thought, well, it'd be nice to do something different. And I love the South Shore. I can't imagine living anywhere else. And I really wanted to make that atmosphere real and feel like tangible and something people could relate to. And based on the reviews, like on Amazon and stuff, people have said that, like, yeah, the environment is almost its own character.
We got about 5 minutes left, but that's enough time for us to at least. I believe that you've kind of teased that without giving it away, that folks they might be a little stunned at what the ending is.
Yes, the ending has a huge emotional impact in several different ways, and I really wanted to make that something that sits with the reader long after they've like closed the book, like something, and especially the epilogue is a very powerful emotional scene that I can't give away, but it's like it was such a perfect ending. It was the only thing in the whole manuscript my agent was like, yeah, leave that alone. Like the prologue's fine. I mean, the epilogue's fine. But you got to change everything else. And I'm very happy with that. And to be honest, like whenever I read it, I get a little choked up reading it because it's a very powerful scene. So I really wanted to make it count and have this more than just be a fast-paced thriller. I wanted to have like a really emotional depth to it. So yeah.
Okay. What are you hearing back from readers? I mean, I'm sure folks who can buy your book, and I believe they can buy it on Amazon.
Yep.
Right. What are readers saying as far as what they like about your book?
It's been a lot of positive feedback, which I'm eternally grateful for. Yeah, they love the pacing, they love the twists and turns, and they love the character. And like I said, so luckily they can relate to this guy, even though he's very much an anti-hero.
Yeah.
And they're on his side, and they said they love that sort of emotional core to the whole story. And there are no necessarily evil people. Like each person has their own agenda, and everybody's doing something for a compelling reason. So they liked it that it was without judgment. That like it wasn't necessarily good and evil. It was just people who make bad choices and then have to live with the consequences. So yeah, it seems to be resonating with the readers, which is phenomenal.
And you're not done. You're not one and done by any means, because you're already working on a sequel. Are you not?
Yes, I am. Picks up like a week after this one ends, and this will be a more of like kind of straightforward caper sort of story, but also with its own like emotional undercurrent, which I'm looking forward to exploring.
Good word. I like the word caper.
Yeah.
Folks that want to find out more about you, if they want to be able to get a book, how can they find you? Either website or socials?
Yeah, I don't have a website yet. I got to work. That's the next step. But yeah, Bill Carter, Rockland on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, William F. Carter. I have my YouTube channel, which is all just my music, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm out there, and you can find my stuff on Amazon, Fire and Wrath. So I am very much available to anybody who has any questions or is interested in my silly little writings. I'll be happy to engage.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to read your book.
Thank you.
I found it fascinating. I think if you also have a chance to pick up Fire and Wrath by William F. Carter, excuse me,
No worries.
you will definitely enjoy the book. Again, you can find it on Amazon. And if you're an author and you'd like to appear on Today's Author, drop us a line. info@whca.tv is the way to do so. Until our next conversation, our next author, have a great day.